This Shabbos is Parshas Naso, and today also is the last day of the Meyat Hashlumin of Shavuos, the days that we're still connected with Shavuos, we're able to bring Korbanos for Shavuos. And Sunday, Tesvav Sivan, marks the anniversary of the Frierdiker Rebbe's arrest. Right, he was arrested the night, Tesvav Sivan. So, which later led into Yud Gimel Tammuz, Yud Beis Tammuz, and so on and so forth. So anyway, there's a lot of current events going on that are capturing the news. But the story, Rabbi Yoel repeats the story, I'm probably not saying it exactly right, but something to the effect that Rabbi Simcha Bunim of Pshischa once gave a mashal. He said that there were 3 people stuck in a prison cell, or more than 3. And once a day, they used to lower a hot pot of water for people to drink from. And one of the people in the cell wasn't so smart, and he needed help. It was a little difficult. There was no proper utensils to use, how to maneuver this pot and drink the hot water. And there was, within the cell, he had other smart people, and someone taught him how to, some technique, how to be able to drink from the pot, although he had no, proper utensils, whatever it is. So he once asked, again, I forget the exact details, something to the fact he asked the other guys, why don't you help me? Why don't you show me, how to do this? Why is only this guy helping me? So one guy answered, I'm trying to figure out how to get light into this room. When there's light in this room, you'll be able to see automatically instead of having to figure out and move your hand. The third guy said, I'm trying to figure out how to get out of here and how to completely get out of this cell. You understand? So many times when there's problems in life, or different things, we deal with the immediate cause and effect. In other words, if there's hot water that comes down into a cell, so how do I drink it? Because another guy thinks a little deeper. How do I get light into the room to be able to see what's really going on? Then I won't need to figure out some technique. The third guy is thinking, how do I get out of here? I'm not trying to figure out how to live in the cell the best way possible, but how am I able to get the freedom? And this mashal applies, a very deep mashal, applies to many things in life and Avodas Hashem in general. But particularly sometimes we see events that unfold that, all the layers are true. When they're putting down hot water, you have to figure out how to drink it, you have to figure out how to bring light. The question is, what's tutzich? What's the ultimate thing that's going on over here? So I really don't know what it is, but frankly, it seems to me that the events over the past week are not b'derech hateva so much. I don't think in b'derech hateva you had a situation in history before. The whole country was in an uproar. The Rebbe once spoke a sicha. I think it was in Tavshin Chav Ches. The Rebbe was after the 6-Day War, and the Rebbe was speaking about how various events that unfolded in the past years before that were not natural. The Rebbe spoke about the First World War, the Second World War. They all started with events that didn't make sense. You had once someone assassinated someone, and wherever it was in Serbia, that put the whole world at war. And then the Second World War also, and the 6-Day War, which was a more of a positive event to some extent at least, was also the events that led up to it didn't follow a ordered pattern. There was obviously the Eibishter was orchestrating things. So this whole thing with this Magefa going on with Corona, and then this was obviously the call to action is not just about how do we figure out.
So what is the call to action?
Tolerance. How do we figure out? So I'll tell you like this: there was a again, this is just my personal feeling. There was a KGB. During the 1980s, you had different Russian KGB officials that I forgot the word in English. They, went over to the American side. And defectors, yeah. And he was giving a whole explanation. What was the plan of the Russians? How are they going to take over, free countries? They're going to come in with a bunch of guns and tanks and take over the countries? He said no. He said there's a thought-out plan. Plan is as for 40, 50 years, he says, I forget exactly what he called it, it's not Negeya, it's not Taisi Sarab, but he said the first stage is you denormalize a place. He says just cause any small thing that someone is making noise about, that someone is upset about, whether it's the government or this, any small thing, you try to blow it up. You try to get people more and more disoriented with what's going on. So that takes 40, 50 years. Then you destabilize the country. You cause events, mayhem, riots. You just cause events to push it, the whole place spirals out of control. And that's the perfect setting, that then the Russians could come in and take over the place. What's the point? Obviously, the point is, I'm not getting into conspiracies over here. The point is when the Eibishter wants us to come into a new reality, so we're sometimes not ready to just move into new reality, overnight. We have to sometimes go through a denormalization process. We have to realize that the world, as we know it, is not going to be the same. You understand? Mashiach
so
is
you're
coming.
saying
So the whole, I don't know, I'm just saying the world is going crazy. There's no suffix bedavar. It's not just about this, that. How do we? Obviously, everything is true. Figuring out how to have tolerance, side tolerance, from inside the police to the victim, and side tolerance. The people's stores are being looted, which they didn't do anything wrong. There's also part.
I think we have to tolerate ourselves.
There's a much greater issue over here. The world is obviously, I don't know, I'm not the Abraham. I have no idea. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just saying, I think there's something more going on than just, people thought Corona's over, life is going back to normal. The Abraham shows, no, it's not. This thing erupted, and whatever. So anyway, the point is, what does this all have to do with us? What could we do about it? So we have Naso Yisroish. What does Pashas Naso means? You have to lift up your head. How do you lift up your head? Your head is your. You have to lift up your head. So the Rebbe spoke many times. We're coming now from Shavuos. A person has to. The world, right? Al Shleish. We're going to say the Shabbos and Pirkei Avos. The world stands on three things. Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. The world is shaking. A person is also a world, and a person's life, he's also shaking many times. We go through different things which might destabilize us, might make us go through who knows what. So there's three things. There's Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. A person needs to have three pillars. You have to daven, you have to learn, you have to help other people. Every one of these three things is a crucial component. Same way a table needs at least three legs to stand, right? You need to have Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. So Naso Yisroish means you have to lift up your head. You have to lift up yourself. Torah makes a person different. In other words, when you're learning Torah, not as an intellectual, pursuit, but as something to connect with Eibishter, it lifts yourself up. Torah is the one that shows us how to have tolerance. Torah is the one that teaches us how to deal with life crisis. And if we would lift ourselves up to Torah completely, not we go with our head. We need our head, but our head should be permeated with something which is higher than us. That's first of all. The second thing is, when the Rebbe spoke many times, the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe was with education. Education for Jewish kids, and the Rebbe extended it really to education for the whole world. It's speaking about Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and the moment of silence and all of that, right? If we all understand that if people will be educated with the moment of silence and the eye that sees and the ear that hears, so inside the police, inside the people, and everyone will behave a little differently, right? So it's all about human emotions, that are naturally unrestrained, naturally ayer pera adam yula. The person is born with, whatever it might be, and we need to discipline ourselves. The only way you could properly discipline yourself is not that you're afraid of the police, because the police could take advantage of you, and you could take advantage of the police. It has to be that there's the Eibishter that watches you, and the Tesva of Sivan, where the Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested for chinuch of Jewish kids. So we have to educate Jewish children that way, and in a certain sense. Obviously, it's not directly connected with Tesla of Sivan, but by and large, it's educating the world that you have the idea of Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and it's not just only about tolerance, but the tolerance has to be based on understanding that every person, that's what the Eibishter wants. The Eibishter set up the world that way. That's a much more uniting factor than just the human cause for human, that everyone should be equal and everything, which is very nice and fine. But the only thing that really gives substance to it is when it's done based on the Eibishter. So this is my little thought of the thing, and what does it mean to us? Again, I really don't know what's going on. I'm not a prophet. I'm not saying maybe I'm totally wrong, but obviously when the world is shaking beyond control, so the message is not that we should go crazy. The message is we should try to add stability in our own, any pool of taiva, any good deed today has much more. You see what's going on. One act, the whole country's in uproar. One virus that spreads from whatever, from China, the whole world is closed down.
And one
Pula Toiva, one good deed, On the contrary, do an act of goodness. You're not gonna fight violence by violence. You fight, there was a chassid, Rabbi Lieberman. He was an artist, and I heard from Rabbi Riots, Shalom. He passed away. He was our teacher. So he told us that the Mendel Lieberman was Mendel Futterfass's brother. He was an artist. Was him and Zalman Klein were the two famous Chassidish artists. And the Rebbe came out with Ufaratzta, right? In the early years of the Rebbe's Nasias, Tavshin Yutes, forget exactly when it was. The Rebbe came with Ufaratzta, spread out all over. And the Rebbe asked him in Yechidus to make a painting describing Ufaratzta. So the Rebbe asked him, how does he envision as an artist? How would he depict in a painting the message of Ufaratzta? So he was honest. He told the Rebbe he thinks the message of Ufaratzta is smash the windows, break the buildings, spread out, just go full force out. So the Rebbe says, no, you got it all wrong. The Rebbe says, make a picture of a tree growing by a fence, and the branches of the tree spreading all out. Ufaratzta doesn't mean to break. You don't accomplish something by smashing down the world in your face. On the contrary, spread goodness and kindness in a positive, in a healing way, and that don't break the fence. The contrary, spread the branches all around. Anyway, so that is the thing. It's obviously it's hard not to get caught up and be affected with what's going on, but that's, I guess, part of our avodah, that the Eibusher wants us to do a little bit more, and to nasi yisroish, to lift up our heads, to look at things from a Torah perspective, and and make this world a better place, not just in the short term, that there shouldn't be violence and there shouldn't be racism, whatever it is, but in the long term, the world is shaking on a much more fundamental way than we imagined it did. And all the more so we understand that the message we need to bring is something much more fundamental, and that's what Mashiach really is. It's not just an imaginary world. It's a message of a world that is completely in sync. Everyone is living their lives according to what the Eibishter wants. The ayin lo yavoiz and shemas, you're aware of the Eibishter. Mola to stay as Hashem. The world is full of the knowledge of Hashem. Yeah, obviously it means you understand the deepest levels of godliness, but first and foremost it means the whole world lives their lives in the way that they feel the Eibusher's presence. Before they do something, they think, what would Eibusher want me to do in this case? Anyway, that is my little thought for the week, and the ikar is that we should have Mashiach now. We should have a world of good and kindness and godliness and all good things, and all of this should just, I don't know what, but it should be transformed to good, and we should have good things shaking us up, for good ways. Anyway, l'chaim.